In this video, we're going to make the official League of Legends Off Meta Tierlist, updated for the huge durability patch. Some champions got a lot better and some should be avoided at all costs, so I'm going to condense my hundreds of hours of analysis and interviews with Off Meta players who are Master, Grandmaster and Challenger, and throughout the video the picks will get better and better, until we finally crown the new best Off Meta pick. This is a new pick that's easy to learn and guaranteed to get you LP. So what is the worst Off Meta pick we've ever found in high elo? That crown now goes to full AD Shyvana top, a high risk, low reward pick with no laning phase, and no way for her to kill dragons, so her passive is literally useless. AP Gangplank deserves to join her with this title as well, being an AP burst champion that's difficult to play, and his damage is also way too low for the new patch. So it's pretty insane that two players managed to hit master tier with these picks. But there is one pick that's too powerful even for this tier list, and that is today's sponsor, the Alienware Aurora R13. This PC has challenger level specs, all the way up to the Nvidia RTX 3090, top of the line AMD cards, and even i9 processors. And while it may not turn you into a pro player overnight, it does let you teamfight with perfect FPS so you can stay focused in those super important moments. I personally have had my R13 for 6 months now, and instead of only using it to play League, I've been playing lots of new games, all of which have much higher graphics requirements, but the R13 handles them with ease, playing new games on ultra settings with no problem. One thing I often see in the YouTube comments when advertising the R13 is people have heard that it has overheating issues from some reviews. Personally, I've had absolutely no problems with mine. It's been great just opening up the box, plugging it in, and getting a PC that can handle anything I throw at it. The cooling is very effective. If you want to see a PC with heating issues, take a look at the one that I built myself before this. When I built it, I did a ton of research, including on YouTube PC building channels, and I still ended up with all of these problems, so I think I trust a big company like Alienware a lot more. The price is also a complaint that I've heard about, but when you're buying a premium gaming machine that you can also use to do work on, you're really paying for the powerful components, as well as Alienware's expert builders, and their really useful customer support that can help you if there's ever a problem. I had a small issue with my R13's lighting, but after 10 minutes on the phone with their support it was fixed right away, letting me get right back to customizing the lights to any colour that I want, both inside and outside. So if all of this sounds good to you, then you can get your own Aurora R13 at the link in the description below. Thanks again to Alienware. D tier. Some really interesting picks that you probably shouldn't play in ranked anymore, since Riot nerfed them with the new patch. Picks like Smite Janna top, Twitch top, Rakan top, and Yuumi top for a period of time were the strongest roaming picks in the game, but they're now much worse because snowballing is a much harder strategy. However, one roaming top laner was completely unaffected by these nerfs, and is actually in a very high tier. More on them later. One champion who wasn't nerfed is AD Thresh top. It's a great idea with strong disengage and a great frontliner, but he really struggles to win games by himself. Full AD, Lee Sin mid, Master Yi mid, and AP Rakan are all similar picks, as they've all had times where they can be picked in Iron, or all the way up to Pro play, but ever since pros started picking them, Riot has not been kind, with them getting nerfed and even Yi having a negative win rate in low elo, the place he's usually meant to dominate. Draven top is also in this tier as he relied so much on early game power to get kills and snowball, and in top lane right now this isn't the way to win. Assassin Ivern mid and also Maokai mid both go in this tier. They're the two trees who can't find any good way to output damage, so they're easily outscaled by every other mid laner. One highlight of this tier is AP Wukong, a burst champion who can abuse weird item interactions to do damage. In our video we mentioned a huge bug with this pick, where he couldn't stack tier, and since then Riot has fixed it, which is a huge win for this pick. But unfortunately he still lacks damage and kinda sucks. So let's move on to some actual good picks. C tier is reserved for the off-meta picks that are explosive in the right hands, and reward players for playing them a lot. But for your first 20 games, expect to lose. Nothing like the super easy, super strong picks we have coming up later in the video. One hugely improved pick for this patch is Tank Nidalee top lane. Before the patch she was awful, struggling to help her team even a little bit in teamfights. But now teamfights are longer, and Tank Nidalee is actually useful, getting more heals off, getting more slows off with Iceborne Gauntlet, and no longer just being a spectator. The picks AP Sejuani mid, Gale Force Garen, Lethality Aatrox jungle, and AP Rengar are all the one-shotting champions, and they are actually not bad. One-shots do still exist in League. And these pigs can still get 1v1 kills even early on, even though squishy enemies got more durability. This has become balanced out with durability for the one-shotters, so a pick like AP Rengar is now much safer. Meanwhile, his damage is still more than enough to kill enemies with a big AoE burst. Qiyana Yuumi bot lane is also in this tier as a pick that thrives in team fights, with huge AoE damage. Yuumi is OP and Qiyana wasn't really affected by the patch, so it should still be very good. Another duo, Lee Sin Taric, is one that's very hard to mess up, with Lee Sin's Q and Taric's stun being an unmissable combo that stuns enemies and forces them to take all of Lee Sin's burst. With lethality being weaker, this pick is lower down, but it is being buffed soon. Enchanter supports have become borderline OP in this patch, but one who is still struggling is Orianna. With a huge AoE CC and good shielding, she's fine, but even at your best, you're still not going to be as useful as a bad Janna player. AP damage supports like Talia support, Anivia, Twisted Fate, and even Karthus used to be some of the best, with huge damage that lets them keep up with even carries. But unfortunately for these 4 picks, their game plan has been knocked off course by Riot, and so even a pick like Karthus support that our player used to easily stay in high EUS Challenger has now got him stuck in Diamond. They're still very good picks, but the problem is their item builds are now just more expensive, now having to get Leandries and other full items before they can start to one-shot people, which I guess is kind of fair. But luckily, not all of this class is dead, and one of them is even in S tier. The marksmen Jhin top, Aphelios top, Akshan jungle, and Lucian jungle are all AD carries, so that should mean they got a lot stronger this patch, right? Well, unfortunately no, because they now have to play against much harder matchups, with tankier picks in their roles. Sure, these marksmen can survive for a bit longer, but they also have less poke damage, and struggle to kill enemies as easily, so they've fallen down a tier. To quickly round out C tier, we have a bunch of misfits who struggle to carry games, which isn't ideal in solo queue. Singed Yuumi got heavily nerfed, Wukong support and Quinn support are great tanky CC picks, who are best in fast team fights, which of course we don't have anymore. Kled mid, Urgot support, Tank Vi, and Xin Zhao mid are all picks that are limited in either damage or utility, with their main way of winning being snowballing games, which we now know isn't as effective, with Alawi mid at the end, with mid still probably being her best role, thanks to her being able to spam 4 tentacles and pull off 1v2s, but lack of mobility means it's hard for her to make plays in solo queue. B tier is probably my favourite of all of them, as it's now full of picks that can easily keep up with the meta, while still being really fun to play. Picks like Ashe top lane, the super annoying slowing pick that specialises in long fights and refuses to ever die. I'm just sorry if you ever have to play against it. Champions like Taric top, AD Akali, Alistar top, Nasus jungle, Kayn top, and Tank Kha'Zix mid are all specialists in super long team fights, as they can keep pumping out utility and damage for as long as your team needs. AD Akali is a huge one for this patch, having too many survivability tools, which means enemies have to run around in circles trying to catch her. Meanwhile, she still has all of the damage she needs to dive and kill your carry. Lethality Urgot, Talon support, and Ahri support are picks you wouldn't expect in this tier, as they're all burst damage pick champions. But interestingly, they weren't affected by the patch, because their damage is so quick and effective. They still have the damage to quickly kill people before they can start healing, but also now they're less risky, with Ahri being safer entering and leaving fights, Talon now getting extra time to pull off his full combo and then escape, and Lethality Urgot being a lot safer in team fights, so he now has more time to get an execute and land a huge AoE fear on the enemy team, so he can DPS all of them and win the fight. Champions with percentage health damage like Vayne mid, AP Gnar mid, and AP Varus mid are very stable picks for this meta, as their damage hasn't been affected, but they did get more tanky. Vayne and Gnar have an easier time kiting enemies, and can afford to take a skill shot or two while they're killing multiple enemies in a fight. And AP Varus still only needs to land ultimate and then proc his passive stacks to pop enemies one by one. Our next duo go in this tier, Pyke Talia bot lane, with the Talia rework turning her into more of a scaling pick. Her early game burst has gone, and so this combo is no longer easy kills in bot lane. It now requires them to use their extra poke, as well as more coordination, with Pyke being able to hook people into Talia's new stun on her rocks for an easy knockup, letting them still get kills in lane and carry the game. Now it's time for my super biased fun picks for this tier. I think they're very good, but for some reason lots of people hate playing with them. AD TF Jungle, for example. He's a crit AD carry, which are really good at the moment, who also has global vision to avoid any threat, that can also instantly gank any lane he wants. how can I not put him high up? Same for AD Ahri. Even with AD carries being a great class, Ahri can still just do their job better, having better CC which forces enemies to walk into her so she can DPS them, and more mobility than any meta bot laner. She can't be 1v1'd thanks to her charm, and no dive champion or assassin can catch her thanks to her ultimate and her W movement speed. Lethality Trundle I put here, and maybe I regret it already, but I think Trundle as a top laner with any build is very underrated, as he just can't lose any 1v1 thanks to his ultimate. And if you go for a lethality build, you can buy Prowler's Claw, which solves his gap closing problems, letting him jump onto squishy carries and burst them. AP Gragas Mid, a classic pick, I think deserves to be in this tier, because of the fact he has very safe laning, great damage, and specifically because jungle Gragas has been terrible for years now, so this is all we have. This tier is way too long already, so let's rapid fire through picks that only a madman would try and learn. Sylar support, great damage, and he also heals, so he likes the longer fights. Teemo jungle, if you pick it you're already a psychopath, but you probably will start to win more games, because damage over time like he has is really good, so he can easily clear camps and spam mushrooms everywhere to create an unavoidable hell on Summoner's Rift. Tanky Aurelion Sol top. This champion's very hard to learn, but somehow people do manage to get LP with him. He's pretty good in top lane thanks to his poke, and he's very safe with this tanky build. And now that Hullbreaker got nerfed, he doesn't have to 1v1 stupidly OP top laners, so it's even better. Zeri jungle, the long range ganker that now kites enemies even easier. This champion is always either overpowered or terrible, so this week our high elo player says she's super strong in the jungle, but I'm sure by next week Riot will have changed their minds and she'll have a 40% win rate. Lysandra support, a great team fighter who can point and click lock down the most important enemy, and has her passive ice clones for AoE damage to help in fights. Full tank Vigar support has a huge cage for CC to set up plays and is impossible to kill, which lets him freely stack up AP by just hitting enemies with his abilities, thanks to his passive. A tier are some of the best picks not only for off meta, but for the whole game, lots of which easily beat the meta and really should take their place. My absolute best pick for this tier is Sion jungle, with hugely powerful long range ganks thanks to his ultimate, and most importantly, the ability to gain a ton of free health from camps, thanks to his passive which gives him permanent HP whenever he kills a minion, and jungle camps count. So when he kills something like Krugs, you get a ton of gold, XP, and also free health. So he farms very efficiently, and then acts as a frontline for his team, with the strongest build being tank. Darius jungle, another really strong one, specifically if you use the Gale Force build. This removes his biggest weakness, mobility, and lets him dash right onto enemies to set up ganks. He can farm very safely and quickly thanks to his burn damage, letting him get this item very fast, beating lots of the meta junglers with their clears. These picks are very good, but funnily they're not even the best junglers on this list. I mentioned one roaming top that is still surviving, and that is Bard top. There's just one tiny reason he's still good. Of course he's a great roamer, and can win games without even spending time in his own lane, but what makes him unique is his infinitely stacking chimes that he can collect around the map while he roams. They turn him into a strong late game pick, even when he lacks items. Rek'Sai top I think belongs in this tier as well, as a super strong solo killer that can outplay enemies with the untarget ability on her ultimate. Combine that with the huge bite damage, and the ability to create a massive tunnel network to escape from any gank. Rek'Sai top can win lane very quickly and start taking over the game. But the best top laner on this whole list right now is Lilia top, having every annoying tool you could want in this meta. She has speed for mobility, she has max health damage on her burn, and she even has healing built into her kit. So everything about this pick is ideal for long fights in lane, and also for 5v5s. Sure, her ultimate still sucks in solo queue, but her synergy with the meta makes her ridiculous, such as with enchanters who can help her survive longer, and actually be a really good DPS threat. Speaking of healing champions, we have Soraka mid. There are many reasons Soraka mid shouldn't be in this tier, and that she's bad this patch. For example, she lacks damage in a lane that's all about scaling into late game and becoming a carry, with picks like Kassadin, Anivia, and Victor dominating in this lane. But while all of these weaknesses appeared with Soraka mid, one huge benefit also appeared, and that is longer fights. So even though healing itself was nerfed, the style of the game benefits her so much that she's still top tier, getting much more time to help her teammates and keep them alive even against burst damage. AP Zac mid is in this tier, with Zac top recently becoming a pro play pick. His laning is very powerful at the moment. AP Zac is special because of his unavoidable engages and AoE AoE burst damage that lets him surprise enemies and win fights before enemies can react. Tryndamere mid is still hanging on in this tier, not because of the pro play version that we all hate, but because of the DPS version that I think is still great, especially in low elo, building full damage, taking advantage of scaling mid laners by diving them, and being unkillable in fights with his ultimate. Tryndamere mid should still be on your ban list. For the strongest duo pick in the whole game, well, that crown goes to Kindred Taric bot lane, which is a video I made almost 2 years ago when 2 Korean players easily managed to hit Challenger together, back when you could duo in that elo. The reason it's so insane is that Kindred can ult and then Taric can ult at the same time, giving them a full 6.5 seconds of complete invulnerability, and so in bot lane, that means they can dive the enemy over and over again with literally no counterplay. And also, it's such an easy combo, you both just press your buttons at the same time, that's it, anyone can pull it off. The synergy is incredible, with Kindred being a great DPS pick, and Taric being one of the best supports in the game right now, thanks to his team fighting, so it's a perfect match. Rengar Ivan also comes very close to this as a classic duo that's only gotten stronger, with Rengar going for a bruiser build and Ivan shielding him over and over again, as well as giving him bushes for extra mobility. Rengar refuses to ever die, extending teamfights even longer. Shaco mid and Shaco support both go in this tier thanks to a new build. They're both super safe mind game picks that now go for an expensive burn build, letting them spam boxes in areas that enemies will have to walk through to get to fights, which does a ton of damage and wins fights before they even start. Having loads of different tricks they can do with their clones to outplay enemies in 1v1s, Shaco mid and supports take a ton of skill, but you can always outplay enemies in any situation. Neeko support is the only other AP burst pick in A tier, and this is thanks in part to her mind games using the clone, just like Shaco, and also due to her huge AoE damage ultimate that can win fights by itself, with a new Everfrost build to help her lock down and burst multiple enemies to win fights for her team. And finally, S tier, the picks that beat the meta, the top 5 of this list that I would highly recommend right now for climbing, with a completely new pick at number 1. At number 5 we have Heimerdinger support, a pick that dominates lane with just his turrets, forcing enemies to constantly deal with them or lose CS. He can then invade the enemy jungle and start 1v1ing carries alone thanks to his great burst. And it's still good thanks to a new Liandry's build. A really good Heimerdinger is able to control the whole game, having the ability to rush Baron at 20 minutes with his ultimate, while also distracting multiple enemies in fights. It's unfair to have him as your support. And number 4 on this new list, we have AP Nunu mid. This is the best roaming champion in the game, that can instantly push wave with a single snowball and sprint into Fog of War, quickly running to another lane and collecting kills with a super hard to dodge CC. Our player hit Korean Challenger with this pick, and has stayed there for multiple years even to this day, with a huge amount of surprise burst damage for teamfights and great engages. Nunu mid always has a way to win games by himself. At number 3 on the list we have a completely new S tier pick that has shot up in the ranks with the new balance changes, Tank Kog'Maw. Kog'Maw is the classic high DPS turret of a pick, and is a pick that must be focused in every fight or the other team will lose. With this new tank build that involves Titanic Hydra and Iceborne Gauntlet, Tank Kog'Maw is not only back, but stronger than ever, as he just does things that no AD carry should be allowed to do, tanking full combos from enemies, surviving and then putting out a ton of damage. So perfect for this meta. Number 2 on this list is a HappyChimeNoises classic, Elise mid. That's right, an early game champion that isn't even good in the jungle is number 2 on this list, and that's because it's a different build. This is attack speed on hit Elise that specializes in split pushing and tower taking with her spider form W. This ability as well as your burst damage has some crazy good scaling, letting Elise outdamage any other champion she finds. It's a good pick for this meta because she can take advantage of scaling mid laners, just by simply walking at them under tower, doing a ton of damage to kill them and use E to escape. Even if you mess this up and don't get the kill, you can always get out without taking damage, thanks to your repel, and then just do it again. If she ever takes too much damage, she can also heal up from minions thanks to the built-in healing in her kit. And in mid lane, she gets a lot more XP and gold, which helps her stay ahead of enemies and dominate games. But there's only one pick worthy of number 1 on this list. Not only a new pick in a new role, but also with a new build that makes it even better. This pick works in literally every elo, all the way up to Challenger, and is probably the easiest way to climb right now. This is Tank Mordekaiser jungle, with Ghost Smite and a Frostfire Gauntlet build. Tank Mordekaiser is a stupidly good fighter, slowing enemies and auto-attacking them to death. having a shield and a load of resistances, meaning enemies can't beat him even if he misses all of his skill shots. The only thing you really need to land is your point and click overpowered ultimate, which steals AD, AP, attack speed, health, armor, and even magic resist from his target, gaining them himself. Having really fast jungle clear thanks to his AoE damage passive and his Q, he can farm really fast early on, so that as soon as he hits level 6, he can sprint into any lane with Ghost, use this point and click ultimate, and hold the enemy in place outside their tower to set up a kill. As a jungler, he's at every objective, using ult to create picks and start fights. The longer the fight is, the more value his passive AoE damage gets, as well as the more slows his gauntlet gets, also having Demonic Embrace for even more damage over time, since this champion can't lose a 1v1 thanks to his ultimate and can also be a frontline in teamfights. Of course this pick is going to be really good. Right now the AP version of this build already has a very high win rate, and I believe the tank build honestly is much better, so I can only imagine how high it can get if people swap. If you want to play any of these picks, then a full guide to each of them is on my channel, including Tank Mordekaiser Jungle. If you have your own off meta pick, please suggest it in the comments, and maybe I'll rate them all in a future tier list. Thanks again to Alienware for sponsoring this video. Link to their S+ tier PC is in the description. Thanks so much for watching.